Good evening, everybody. Hello, a very warm welcome to you by Friends of Europe. Welcome to this What the Chief Says online discussion, where we bring you influencer, decision maker, power broker of sorts to engage with you directly on matters that are all about Europe and its future and its security and its sustainability and the whole gamut. Today, I'm very, very pleased that we're able to invite and introduce Emma Navarro, Vice President of the European Investment Bank, for this conversation around Europe's short and long-term response to COVID-19. In particular, in the context of this conversation, will the response jeopardize Europe's climate ambition? So a number of issues that have been crossing our minds, our paths, our screens as we've been in social isolation. We've been watching the crisis unfold, not only in terms of infections, but also what's been happening to the political fight within Europe, the lack of solidarity, the one-upmanship, or whether we want to support each other or not, the sense that the more wiser spending states don't want to help the what that's perceived as the less wise spending states. And we've got a major conversation and philosophical issue about what Europe really stands for and the values that actually were established for its underpinning and its continuity and its future. And it feels suddenly all of that is unraveling and coming into question. Now, one institution, a distinct institution, is the European Investment Bank that has acted fast. And Emma, I'm going to bring you in a moment, but it's interesting. Your board is made up of member states. Member states contribute. You play on the international capital markets to raise your money, and you've been able to mobilize cash very quickly, uniquely so. The 25 billion guarantee, and you're working on other matters too. So before I bring in that wider question about how you've been able to do it and what you're planning to do in response to the crisis, I want to ask you a bit of a personal question about the leadership challenge for you. You are a woman who has come from the financial industry. You've worked in senior positions in Spain, advising the government there. You've worked in the IMF also, and now you're the Vice President of the European Investment Bank. There aren't many women in the world, as you know, with that kind of background and portfolio. This is probably one of the biggest challenges in your career, perhaps. I asked the same question of the Executive Vice President, Margareta Vestager, when she was here with me 2 weeks ago. But in the sense that I think it's important that people hear that there's a real leadership challenge here in a situation that we've never experienced before. So firstly, over to you to say a little bit about the leadership challenge you're facing, and then what the bank is doing in response to the virus and its plans.
Well, thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here. On the leadership challenge, of course, this is an unprecedented situation, and this requires a lot of efforts from all of us that have a leadership position in institutions or in key roles at a government or at an institutional level. I think that in my opinion, one of the most relevant features that you need in this crisis, which is so exceptional, is that you need to seek input, you need to listen to experts, and you need to also, because we are all in confinement, so you need to keep engagement with the people in your organizations, to keep high the morale, and to keep all working in a very stressful situations, but in a very difficult situations, because we are working in testing a new way of working. In my institution, we are almost everyone home teleworking. And this is, of course, a big test, but we need to show that we are committed, and we need to seek the bigger role that we are playing in this unprecedented situation.
Well, thank you. I can imagine, trying to marshal the the kind of resources you have been able to, when everyone is at home working at a distance, is a huge challenge in being able to kind of see people's eyes and have the conversation around the table. But more of that anon. So tell us about the EIB's response in terms of the speed with which you've pulled together this 25 billion package as a guarantee scheme, if you like, but your plans to make that as a multiplier. So can you just say a little bit about what you're doing and what the plans are?
Well, yes. First of all, as the EU bank, because we are the Bank of the European Union, we are one of the key instruments of the European response to the coronavirus crisis. And I think that we can also be a very useful tool in support of the real economy. And here I would like to mention two different responses. The first is the response that we are doing with our own resources. And here we adopted already, well, by mid-May, early May, a first response package to mobilize up to 40 billion euros to support European corporates, in particular SMEs, and in collaboration with our partners at the commercial banks, which are our financial partners. And with this package, we were relying on our EIB resources, and also a part of this package rely on resources from the EU budget. But those were already some resources that were almost allocated to the EIB by the Commission and by our own resources. And we also try to give priority to those investments that were related to the COVID crisis, for example, to finance critical health infrastructure and equipment, something that we felt was needed in the crisis, and also to support research and development programs with the aim to find a vaccine and treatment for the coronavirus. And we made available 5 billion euros already immediately available, but we have the commitment to increase this amount if needed. And we are also, with our own resources, trying to make an effort to adapt our annual investment plan to respond to the needs that we see, the emergency needs that come from the crisis, the most pressing financing needs. And for example, we are accelerating some operations. We are prioritizing SME intermediated financing, because we believe that SMEs are one vulnerable segment in this crisis. We have also adapted and relaxed the scope of our financing, because we are normally a long-term investor, and now we have adopted new measures to support working capital for SMEs, for example, something that we felt this was needed in this crisis, or to support some expenditures that are urgent in the health system. And those are special COVID operations. And we have adopted also a fast-track procedure to be able to approve COVID operations in a very swift manner. And for example, outside Europe, we are supporting projects in response of COVID, making available also 5.2 billion euros of response. And this is what we are doing with our own resources, with a big effort to try to respond to these emergency financing needs. But we also, are aware that our resources are limited, and we needed to go beyond that to respond to an unprecedented situation that we were facing. And that is where the European Guarantee Fund that you were mentioning comes in. We propose member states the creation of an European Guarantee Fund that has, and this fund has been already welcomed by the European finance ministers. In fact, they endorsed this initiative in the Eurogroup in inclusive format that took place on the 9th of April. And this will be a 25 billion fund that will be financed by with contributions from member states and will back the EIB group operations, and this will enable us to scale up our support to European corporates with a special focus again on SMEs, and we will be able to provide up to 200 billion euros of financing for SMEs. And well, the fund will be implemented by the EIB group, that is the bank and the European Investment Fund, and we will seek partnerships with commercial lenders and with national promotional banks. And we are right now working very hard to create this fund, and we are confident that we will be able to have this fund in place by early May. We need that member states make the contributions to the fund, but they have endorsed with this political commitment in the Eurogroup the idea of the creation of this fund, and we are now finishing the details. And I think that this fund is really important because this represents a truly European response. And in a way, we saw that we have a lot of national responses, especially in the form of guarantee schemes. But with this fund, we will be able to complement those national responses, and also we will be able to establish a level playing field, because the national responses, on some occasions, they not all have the same characteristics, and not all are as advanced. In some countries, we have more advanced responses than in others. So with this, we will have a uniform tool that will be able to go to every country and complement the national responses.
Great, thank you.
Well,
no,
so
and so,
if you,
sorry, go on. You finish.
Well, I think that this is, of course, the response that we are elaborating right now. We are working on this. We have these two parts. Of course, we will also see the recovery phase, and in the recovery phase, the EIB is also meant to play an important role, because at the end of the day, our mission is to support investments that are critical for European growth. And I think that we have played in the past already a counter-cyclical role supporting critical investments for Euro, and we are very committed to continue doing and performing this role again in this crisis.
Thank you. Great. That's very clear and very helpful, in the sense that one of the I suppose the bulwarks of Europe is the SMEs. SMEs are the engine, if you like, of economic growth. And what you're saying is that that's the priority for you, and you want to get the money out fast. And you've been able to demonstrate, unlike elsewhere, I suppose, a level of consensus, because your board is made up of member states. And so there's a kind of an agreement to move ahead. But I suppose it depends on also what happens more widely within the council, and what leaders elsewhere say about creating some sort of, let's say, debt mechanism, shared debt mechanism, etc. But you will be playing your part, as I understand it, to make sure you can act fast and not be fettered by some of that conversation. Is that right? That you can be able to move forward in the way you've described?
Well, yes, in fact, we are already working with our board of directors, which are the representative of member states.
Indeed.
They already endorsed the first report on our fund, and we are now working on the specific details. For example, the product delivery. This is something that we need to continue working on. Of course, this will be adapted to the needs of every country, but the idea is that the SMEs will be an important part of the response, even if we need to adapt to every country. And this is complementary to other discussions that are right now taking place. And we saw in the Eurogroup that the Eurogroup in inclusive format, because all ministers from the EU participated, well, the Eurogroup decided 3 types of, I would say, three types of safeguards or three types of defense defense actions. One for workers, and that is the program that the Commission will launch to support social insurance schemes for workers. And then we have also the support for governments. And here is where all these discussions on the ESM and on the other type of instruments are taking place, and the mutualization of debt. And then it is our response to the European economy. But in a way, the EIB is an instrument that is a way of putting in common and sharing the burden of all member states, because our response is a truly pan-European response, because all the member states will contribute to this fund. They will share the risk of these funds, and they will finance those investments with an instrument, which is the EIB, which is a common instrument. So we tap the money from capital markets, but our shareholders are the member states, and we are in a way sharing the risk at the EIB.
Exactly, and so all what you just said, the principles of the risk sharing, the burden sharing, a common tool, you'd have thought you've got the model right. But yet, in the wider conversation amongst politicians, we don't seem to have that same approach to the model. But let's bring our patient viewers in. We have a whole range of people on Zoom. A lot of our members are there. Can I just ask that those of you who haven't got your camera on, please put your camera on and put your name on, because we'd love to see you, as well as have your name. So those of you who haven't, please do so. Can I ask that those of you who want to ask a question, you have to use your virtual hand. So whilst it's great to see you waving, which I'll wave back at, it's more helpful to me if you use your virtual hand, because that way we can manage it. So there's a virtual hand on your screen. Lovely, I'll wave back to all of you, but I need you to use your virtual hand so that we can manage this process properly. And those of you, are you all okay with finding your virtual hand? I can see some people are kind of looking cross-eyed and thinking, where is it? You should be okay. You should have it under, participants, and then there you can look at the hand. So we'll try and manage that the best we can. And we also have people on live stream, obviously, who will raise their questions through social media. So first off, you were waving furiously, Carolee Hendricks, please. I've introduced you, but introduce yourself, please. Welcome, and say what your question is.
Okay, so hello everybody. I'm Carolee, saying hi from Tallinn, Estonia. I'm a CEO and co-founder of Jobatical, and also a member of European Young Leaders. So my question, Emma, you mentioned the national responses, and one of the things that we have seen is the rise of so-called state capitalism that the virus has. So a lot of, we see states buying stakes in companies or nationalizing companies. So my question to you is, first of all, what are your thoughts on that? And what are your thoughts on its impact on both European investment landscape and economy moving forward?
Carolee, that's a big one. So I was going to take three at a go, but you've stopped me in my tracks, because I'd want to give Emma the opportunity to give you a bit of a full story, because I'm sure that question is probably in the minds of a lot of people out there. So first, Emma, give a shot at that, then I'll bring others in who are quite keen to come in and ask you questions.
Well, it is true that we are seeing that the state has stepped in a way that is very exceptional. But I think that this is also in a way commensurate with the challenge that we are facing, because at the end of the day, the role of the public sector is to support the economy, especially when you are facing this type of unprecedented situation where the private sector cannot comply and meet the expectations or meet the role, because we are all in a lockdown. So I think that in a way, the response from the public sector, which must be exceptional, this is not something that is there to last forever. This is very exceptional and limited to a situation where you need a specific intervention to comply and to respond to a situation that where you need to address some lacks that are existing. So I think that is very important. Of course, and we are doing this respecting, well, the rules that we all have in our democracies, and as a very exceptional crisis response situation. So I think that in those countries where you see that there is a claim that the state might also buy shares in companies in order to provide support, this is only meant to avoid something that could be also a more difficult situation, because we are not living normal times. We are in a very exceptional situation, and I think that in this situation, the public sector is in a better position to fulfill some of the functions and address some of the needs that are there.
Carol, thank you very much, but you raised that very interesting point, isn't it, about the vast swathes of the private sector are suddenly going to be underpinned by taxpayers' money. You're suddenly having private sector owned by the public, and I suppose what the questions are about payback. Did you have a thought on it yourself before I move on to the next speaker? Because obviously there was an issue for you at the heart of your question, Carolee.
I think for me the question here is, so that's something that I am thinking about, is how will it actually impact in terms of protectionism, because that's one of the things that it is causing, right? Countries are starting to protect itself. The fact that there's a combination of private money, public money, how will it impact in terms of like investments coming towards Europe moving forward? So I think there's a lot of mess. And I was just wondering, what are the thoughts in terms of Emma and in general in your team and your company right now, in the sense how we're moving forward?
Yeah, sure. And I think there's something about having a modelling, isn't there? Because at the moment, this is about trying to respond to the huge cavern of a problem that you've got. So you need to be able to kind of, I suppose, provide a lifeline. But then when you're actually going to start swimming and get to the shore, it depends on what that looks like. And I don't know what the economic modelers can even do about this, because we've never had a situation like this. But before I bring you back in, Emma, I have Martin Hosik. Where are you?
Yeah, hello.
Hi,
and good evening from Bratislava.
Welcome. Sorry?
Good evening from Bratislava, Slovakia.
Welcome. Please say who you are.
Thank you for having me. I'm a member of European Parliament from the Renew Group, and a member of the Progressive Slovakia Party back home. And thank you for having this really intriguing discussion. And as being the shadow rapporteur for the group, also for the EIB annual report, I'm following closely the work of the bank, and I really appreciate it. And I'm wondering, how are you planning to look at policy coherence? Because due to the corona, what hasn't happened is that the climate and environmental emergencies haven't gone away. We still face them. We already face a drought in Central Europe again early this year. And I think this is something which we have, on one hand, massive challenge ahead of us, but also a unique opportunity to address two problems at the same time. So I'm wondering if the EIB lending is going to be, especially in terms of the long-term lending, so not kind of keeping companies afloat, but especially the kind of rebuild investment, looking also at assessing the environmental impact. So we can use this crisis and all the public investment to basically turn the European industry especially, but generally the European economy into becoming a true environmental leader and address the issues of emissions and loss of biodiversity on the others.
Okay, so basically, how do we make sure this investment, this bailout, if you like, becomes a green recovery into the future? Before I ask you to come back, Emma, I just want to ask if anybody else in the audience, a similar question or issue regarding to the climate issue. Is there anybody out there who wants to raise this point? If not, I will swiftly move on. I can't see any hands up. Okay, Emma, back to you.
Okay, well, it is true that right now we are focused on the COVID response, and well, we are also financing other operations as we normally do, and part of our business plan. So we are still appraising and approving operations that are normal, that were part of our business plan. But of course, in the current circumstances where the economy is paralyzed, that most of us are living a lockdown, and this is having a huge impact in the economy, and we need to make sure that this impact is temporary, so we don't have a permanent effect on the economy. We need to provide this type of temporary supports. But this does not mean that the EIB will not is going to change its climate ambition, and in fact, I am the vice
Indeed,
president.
you are. Yes.
The vice president responsible for climate action and environmental sustainability. I can assure you that we have a very ambitious climate and environment goals, and those goals remain, and we have well committed to increase the financing of climate and environment to 50% of all our operations by 2025, and to be Paris aligned by the end of this year. And we are working to make sure that those commitments are met. And in fact, I think that those things are compatible. And for me, one thing that it is clear, and that this crisis is showing us, is that we need to pay attention to what experts say. And experts have told us that climate change is a global threat, and that it will have huge economic cost and a huge impact on human lives and also on human health. So I think that on the contrary, even if the pandemic is going to have well, an impact on public finances, and also, for example, an impact on the price of energy, and we are seeing that, and this could be a disincentive, I think that that Europe needs to remain committed to this global threat, and this is going also to be an important part of our European diplomacy, that we need to convince our partners that we should not forget about climate change. And I think that in Europe we need to be confident, because I think that the commitment in Europe is very firm. And in fact, Vice President Timmermans have already stated that the European Commission continues to work intensively in the European Green Deal. I can tell you that the EIB is also very, very committed to its role in the European Green Deal. We are going to continue with the climate law to put climate neutrality into European legislation. And we saw also last week or a few days ago, the European Parliament adopting a resolution to make sure that the recovery phase, the recovery is a green recovery. So I think that Europe will, I am confident that Europe will stick to its
if I may interrupt you. So you're saying that there are currently no trade-offs between saving, getting money out there, and the climate change ambition. Is that what you're saying at the moment from your inside kind of experience at the moment?
No, what I'm saying is that we need to remain committed to our climate goals. So we need to have the incentives to to ensure that the investments that we make are investments that are sustainable, also for a green perspective. At the end of the day, of course, I think that after the crisis is going to have an impact on public finances, is having an impact in the price of energy.
Exactly.
And so it is true that we will see some people that will want to dilute the commitment on climate or soften the commitment. But we need to stick to this commitment, because at the end of the day, what I am saying is that this can be also an important threat both to human health and to the economy. And of course, the impact will take place more slowly because climate change is not as abrupt as the pandemic that we are seeing. But in a way, what we see is also a global threat with consequences for human lives, for the health of people, and with a huge economic cost. And that is what I am saying, that we need to react before it is too late. And this is what experts are telling us.
Indeed. And I think if anyone's been in Brussels for the past 2 weeks, we've had temperatures of 29 and 30 in April, which is unheard of. We just, let's think about that for a moment in terms of the scale and speed of temperatures rising in a small town like Brussels, but in the country itself. I have 3 other contributors waiting in the pipeline. So, Kate, so do forgive me if I get your names wrong. You can correct me. So, welcome. Please do introduce yourself and your question.
Thank you. Your pronunciation was excellent.
Oh, thank you.
Hi, I'm Kate, again from Estonia, from Tallinn, from Estonian Parliament, Member of Parliament, EU Affairs Committee and Foreign Affairs Committee.
Okay.
And thank you for the last comment, Emma. It was really, I agree with pretty much everything you said. And I also think that if there are like 2 lessons to take already from the current ongoing crisis, the first one would be that it's a kind of reminder how connected the world really is, and how something that seems to be really far away really has an impact in every single part of the world. And today it is the virus. Tomorrow, literally speaking, it might be the climate change. So this is, in a strange, very strange and sad way, it actually, I think, can support all the efforts when it comes to the climate fight. And the other, just an aspect is how badly we need the digital solutions, how badly we need also the innovation. And my question would be that, do you see digital solutions? I mean, coming from Estonia, I'm a strong believer that...
Well, you're the pathfinder for Europe on digital matters, so I'm not surprised.
Yeah, but I actually also think that digital solutions do align also, again, with the climate change fight as well. So do you see that there can be some sort of combination? And how do you see that digital solutions have some sort of special part in your portfolio as well? So that would be the...
Okay, thank you. Not only becoming a green recovery and improving the green footprint, but also improving our innovation credentials and becoming, I suppose, more responsive to the digital revolution that's around us as we speak. I'm going to take a couple of others before I bring you back, Emma, if I may. I have Pietro Fiocchi.
Pietro Fiocchi, perfect.
Ah, thank you. Welcome. Please introduce yourself and your question.
Hello, I'm Pietro Fiocchi. I'm an MEP from Italy of the ECR group. I have one comment first for Mrs. Navarro. Number one, my impression is that the Italian citizens, but also the European citizens, are very confused about what Europe and the European institutions are doing. I'm not getting into technical, so that there is a lot of confusion about the Corona bonds, the recovery bonds, the SURE program, the MES, and the role of BEI into this string of actions to combat, to fight the incredible economic problem caused by the coronavirus. So this is the first question, and do you think we can be more effective in giving this type of information to the citizens?
So that's about clarity, right? So you want to be able to have greater clarity about the different instruments and packages that are taking place right now. Is that right?
Yes, because the impression is that most of the citizens think that the European institutions do not know what they're doing, or they're very confused about what they're doing.
Okay, sure.
And this is very bad from a political point of view in terms of the European institution itself. So this is very important, in my opinion, to communicate better with the citizens. And the other question is that I agree fully that we need to go ahead with the Green Deal. But of course, it's such a horrible situation from an economic point of view. And we're talking about the downgrade of the Italian treasury bonds to junk. We're talking about, the ratio between the debt and the gross national product of 160% and so on. In such a terrible economic crisis, the first thing that the governments are going to cut are health type of expenses. So the risk is that if we don't focus on the recovery from an economic point of view, we'll have more death than from the coronavirus. So my question is for Mrs. Navarro, and then I stop. How do you choose, and how much power you have to choose between the different type of investments? Because obviously, if you invest in infrastructure, it's obvious that you're doing something good for the environment and also something good for the economy. But for example, if you invest money to close down coal mines, you have the double cost and not much for the economy, but something for the environment. So there are different degrees of investments that can be useful for both the economy and the Green Deal. Thank you very much.
No, thank you. And that relates to my last point about the trade-offs. And actually, does there need to be a trade-off between the two? So I'm going to go to Luc Bass. Luc, are you there? Luc, are you there?
I'm trying to unmute. Sorry for that. Yes, I'm Luc Bass. I'm the European Director for ICN in Brussels, or actually currently in Antwerp, working from home. And I just wanted to elaborate a bit back to the whole debate on the climate bank that EIB has proclaimed itself now, which is great. And to see how we can make the resilience part of the equation and part of the investments here. And especially in a time where a crisis offers, how unfortunate a crisis might be, offers at least opportunities for doing some things really, really different. Because so far, investment in ecosystem resilience, and actually we talk a lot about biodiversity, but then when it comes to investing, the numbers are always very marginal. So how can this be an opportunity to scale up investment in nature-based solutions as well as we do in the energy solutions or the technology solutions? So that's my question.
Okay.
And I'm very curious to see what could happen. Maybe the EIB could even become a nature bank as it has become a climate bank.
Are the two different? But anyway, let's move on. I won't focus on that necessarily per se. Emma, before I bring in three others, do you want to have a quick crack at that in terms of the digital, clarifying the money puzzle, if you like, and what are the trade-offs that we need to think about, and the last comment about nature?
Okay, well, of course, digitalization and those digital investments will remain a priority for the EIB because those are investments that are critical for European growth and European competitiveness. And in fact, as with climate change, these type of investments are essential because they are structural investments that we need, and this should be at the center of the recovery also. And in particular, the crisis has shown how important it is to be very well prepared on digitalization. So this is already a priority for us, and it should remain a priority for the recovery phase. On the other comment on the citizen, and if you allow me, because I think that it is true that the European response, I think that is a solid response. The European Central Bank response to the crisis has been, I think, that very, very active response. In fact, they extended their asset purchase program, and then they enacted another asset purchase program, and they have changed collateral rules. They will buy more than 1 1.1 trillion euros in assets in 2020. So this response is in a way unprecedented. During the previous crisis, we didn't see such a response. And it is true that at the beginning, the fiscal response by the European institution and by European member states was in a way more slowly. In a way, I think that what we saw was that national governments reacted unilaterally very fast, and this in a way has been highlighted by President von der Leyen in the European Parliament. But right now, what we have is well, I think a very robust political commitment of a response amounting to more than 500 billion euros, and also with plans to expand this response to the recovery phase with a recovery fund and with the next MFF. So I think that right now the response of the Eurogroup and the response from the ministers of finance goes in the right direction. It is true that most of this response is sometimes technical, and so it is difficult to explain to the citizens, and we need to make an effort to explain to the citizens what Europe, and when I mean Europe, I mean European institutions and their member states, because at the end of the day, Europe is all of our governments and all the member states and the European Parliament and all the national parliaments. So what we are doing in common, and I think that this European response is of the essence and is very much needed. And it is very important that we communicate that this European response is there, because I think that if not, we will have a lot of disillusion by the citizens, and this could be an important blow to the European project. And so that is to address one of the comments. And I think that when they on trade-offs, normally when we prepare the orientations for our annual investments, we have priority objectives, which are the support for infrastructure, the support for SMEs, the support for, of course, right now the situation is quite exceptional because we see that we need to expand the support for SMEs that we were already providing in a way, and what we are in part also is accelerating this response, but we see that we need to accelerate this type of response to SMEs and to other corporates to address those emergency financing needs. But this does not mean that in the future we will continue having these priority investments. And for those investments, as we only finance solvent investments, so investments that are robust and make sense from an economic point of view, I think that we will contribute both to the economy and for sustainability investments.
Okay, Emma, I'm going to have to ask you to be brief because I've got less than 20 minutes and I've got loads of hands up still.
Okay.
So
okay.
on the
well,
nature.
On the nature, we are right now strengthening our focus on the environment because before, and that is a very important change. Before we only had targets for climate, and now we are introducing targets for climate and environment, and we are developing in a way. I will invite all of you to contribute to our stakeholder exercises to ask for your support how we can do this, but we are trying to monitor better the type of investments that are needed in the environment and how to track those investments.
Absolutely, thank you very much. But those questions about trade-offs and the citizen issue are writ large, I think, in the public debate. Let's come to that in the end. I have three others who've been waiting quite some time. So, Joanna Toivonen, are you there, Joanna? If I've got your name.
Yes, okay, hello. My name is Johanna Toivonen and I come from Turku, from Finland.
Welcome.
Thank you for this speech. Yes, I wanted to bring one issue which we already talked a little bit about, this environmental issue related to current EU policy and this interlinking between the problems. So Emma already mentioned that we still want to commit, or EU want to commit to Green Deal and climate change policy. And from my perspective, I see that those phenomena like climate change and biodiversity loss and also this global health crisis, they are all interlinked very strongly actually, because they have the same root causes like habitat destruction, environmental pollution,
Indeed.
and impact that we cause to nature. So have you considered that interlink and how you are dealing with that in the investments?
Okay, thank you very much for that. I'll bring you back in a moment because I want to take the others in. Alex Holst, is that right? Have I got the name right? Alex, where are you?
Right. Thank you.
Hi, introduce
Holst
yourself.
From the Good Food Institute Europe here in Brussels. I do want to pick up on what we said about trade-offs, and thank you, Emma, for giving this overview and to reconfirm the commitment to deal with climate change. I do think we have to think about trade-offs in terms of long-term commitments, and the picture behind me actually inspired me to think about that. It's taken from another Friends of Europe event from last year about the future of food, and that was
Indeed.
a roundtable on the protein transition, actually. And I think the protein transition and developing alternative proteins is one of the sectors that, when thinking about trade-offs, come out very well, because it does contribute to the ambitions of the Green Deal, reducing greenhouse gas emissions from the agri-food sector. It does help spur economic growth. This is an innovative young sector, plant-based meat, cultivated meat, fermentation-derived food ingredients, that needs a lot of investment and innovation. And actually it helps with reducing the risk of future.
So Alex, if I may get to your point, what is the question you have of Emma?
Yes, my question would be, especially with the EIB Foods existing expertise and focus on the bioeconomy and agri-food, like to what extent does EIB want to refocus on these type of critical sectors that can contribute to...
All right, excellent. I then have Alosh. Peterle? Alosh? You need to unmute. We can't hear you. There you go.
Okay, so I'm former MEP and former Prime Minister of Slovenia.
Welcome.
And for 10 years, President of the Working Group for Health in the European Parliament, and president of those who were fighting against cancer. And I'm very much interested in comprehensive approaches, comprehensive strategies. We cannot have climate today and health tomorrow.
Yeah.
And this situation, I think, teaches us also paradigmatic aspect of the story. And I think that today the attention is very much focused on economic consequences, on social consequences, and I was pleased by Emma's accents on SMEs and complementing national measures. But there are also less economic aspects or elements. My question is, who will boost immunity? Because we had viruses at work in the history of Europe. People died, but some people did not. Those who were better, whose immunity was stronger. And I think that we have to invest in promotion of healthy lifestyle. My question is very simple. Could we condition the use of financial support in this regard? Enterprises could undertake something at this occasion, because health, I think it's still underestimated issue in the European Parliament. And I would end by saying that this debate for me is debate on future of Europe. It's part of the conference on future of Europe. And thank you, Friends of Europe, for this idea.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for that comment. And as a very senior politician, having led a country, you'll know of the trade-offs, and perhaps you might be understanding of the burn that Emma is feeling from inside the organisation in terms of politics as well. So, Emma, if you want to deal with some of those questions first, as well, and we have only less than 10 minutes left, so I want to bring a couple of other people in as well.
Okay, I will be very brief because I think that in part the environmental question, I think, has been already answered in my previous response. We are now focusing not only on climate, even if climate is very visible, but we have climate and environmental targets, and we are strengthening our support to the environment. And in fact, the European Green Deal also has a part that is on biodiversity, and the European Commission is preparing and is strengthening also with its new biodiversity strategy the work there, and we will need to continue supporting biodiversity. And in our bank, we are trying to strengthen this support further. And I think it's a pity that the international conferences on biodiversity has been postponed, because I think that this year will be critical and will mean a quantum leap in terms of efforts to foster the biodiversity work. On the agri-food and the rest of the, well, it is true that this is an area with a lot of economic potential, and this is something that we will need to focus more and more. And in fact, the bioeconomy is one of the areas which is growing in our financing. Today, agriculture and bioeconomy represents around 10% of our lending. In the last 5 years, I think that we have provided around more than 30 billion euros to agriculture and bioeconomy, and this is an area that we will continue to support more and more. And in fact, part of the reform of the common agricultural policy goes in this direction. And
it's true to say that actually, if we were to invest solidly, actually now, Europe could become a huge pathfinder on the nature biodiversity field if we now were to spot the game and really invest heavily in there. But I'll let you come back on your final point as well, please, about the point about interlinking that is being, I think, comes through all time and time again, and how we use investment for improving health matters and health systems, despite the fact that the EU doesn't have competence for health. Emma? Well,
in a way, what we do in our investment appraisals is that we focus on the impact that the projects, because we normally finance, except on this crisis where we are enlarging the scope of our investments, but we finance projects and we assess what are the impacts of those projects on the economy, on the environment, and on health. And of course, if a project has a negative impact on health, this is something that we will consider, because this is something that in a way will prevent us from financing this type of projects. Of course, the problem is that there are some uncertainties on the type of impacts that a project may have, and is in this gray zone where it would be difficult, because you will have to assess all different impacts on the.
I understand, absolutely. Thank you. I've got one question from Twitter, and Charlotte, could you just read that one out for me?
Yes, hello everybody. So Georg Gauger from Brussels wants to know that when implementing the EIB's climate goal in the Guarantee Fund, how do you select the SMEs that should be supported? What are the criteria for this? And how will the process be organized in general?
Well, this is still we are still designing how this will work. But normally we will rely on our intermediate partners, so commercial lenders, commercial banks, and national promotional banks. So they will have the direct contact, the contact on the ground with the SMEs, and we will request that certain conditions on the operations are met, and it will be up to them to provide, to ensure that these conditions are met. And normally in our operations, we have reporting and monitoring of those investments. So this is normally the way that we choose SMEs. It is not us who choose the SMEs. We normally, what we do is we fix certain conditions and criteria, and we rely on our partners.
Okay, and before I cut you off, because Alosh, this question about health systems, I'm not sure I gave you the opportunity to fully respond to that. If you wanted to add something to that.
No, well, what I meant before is that we normally, when we invest in a project, we make an appraisal and we try to see what is the impact of the projects on the different elements, on the environment, on the economy, but not, we try that those projects, those projects should be profitable, because this is the first condition, that we only support profitable projects, because it will have no sense to support projects that are not profitable, that would not be even allowed. And then we will assess the consequences and the impact on the economy, but also the externalities, the impact for the society and the impact for the environment. And if a project has an impact on the health, that we will try to see what is that impact. And then that could be something that could prevent us to finance one project. But I was saying that normally most of the projects, the answer will not be black or white. We will be moving in gray zones where maybe there is a potential impact, and that is the difficult choice, that we will need to see a ranking and assess all the consequences and impact to make a decision. But of course, we have environmental and social standards that they are very rigid, but we are in the process of reforming them to strengthen them even further. And I think that all our investments are meant to be sustainable in a way.
Indeed. I think that thing about the co-linking between environment and health and biodiversity is a really interesting nexus. And I think as we peer out of this or edge out of this, it's absolutely essential that we need to think very differently about that nexus and how do you invest in the enterprising element of that, which absolutely the public sector should take the risk on, so that we can actually have that sense of flourishing in those areas. I have one last question. Vincent? Someone's got a dog in the background. Anyway, Vincent, are you there?
Yes. Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Just about.
Okay, so I'll try to, it's a very short question.
Say who you are again, please. Introduce yourself.
Sorry, my name is Vinciane Petlou. I'm a partner at the Public Affairs Consultancy Interrel. I have a very short question about the recovery phase, so the next phase. What can we expect in terms of the projects you would be supporting? Are there any lessons from FC? That was a very successful program. Did you see some areas that remained, unexploited or untappered from it?
What, at this stage already? Are you asking that question from this particular vantage point right now?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of taking the lessons from FC, and then what can we learn from that for the recovery phase that we will have to move into once the climax of the crisis is behind us?
Thank you, Vincent. A fairly good question to kind of conclude our debate about the lessons from the financial crisis and what we can learn from it in terms of how we approach this one, which is, albeit, fundamentally different. Fundamentally different in terms of the nature of the problem is different, but the scale is different. But Emma, over to you.
Well, of course, once the pandemic is over, we need to focus on the recovery. And I think that in this phase, we will need to make sure that the economy is able to restart, but also that we are able to address the structural challenges that we face, such as climate change, the transition to a greener and more sustainable future, and the technological challenges that we are facing, digitalization, and all those type of investments that are critical for the competitiveness and the robustness of the European economy. And I think that our current priorities, in a way, reflect those challenges that we are facing. And it is probable that we will keep those priorities. But of course, the European leaders are right now focusing and discussing, a recovery fund, how they will implement the MFF. I think that one important lesson from in the Juncker plan is that the use of financial instruments can be very pertinent to leverage on scarce budget resources to provide finance. And when the European budget, the European Commission and the European Investment Bank join forces, we can achieve more. And I think that this is also, in a way, one of the lessons that the European Investment Bank has drawn from its different experiences, that when you face big challenges, joining forces and working together is always better.
Absolutely. And I did say that was the last question, but someone's been desperate to get in, and I've obviously just missed them. Edvard, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Hello.
Hello,
Do introduce yourself. Yes, we can introduce you.
Yes, my name is Edward Sliwinski. I'm working in innovation for a large dairy company. I have a question about the position of scientists, because now with the coronavirus, we see that scientists, in fact, take very important decisions, have very big impact in countries, and they are also strongly believed. But this is not always the case. Also, when you look at a healthy lifestyle or climate change or loss of biodiversity. Emma, what do you think in the future? Will the role of how people look at scientists, will that change?
Well, I hope...
An interesting question for a financier. So go on.
Well, we need to rely on our experts, and the scientists are the experts in many topics, and I think that we need to rely on them. And I think that one of the aspects that we will need to support more and pay attention in after the crisis is on those research and innovation programs that are very much needed and that will be needed to be strengthened, because we have seen that having this strength is critical, and Europe needs to have this strength together and to pull these forces together. And we have seen that in some parts of the world, we are going to more national responses or regional responses. You have China, you have the US, and here Europe needs to stand together to address this.
Absolutely, and pool that resource, that brilliant resource, because we have some of the best innovations, but they get taken elsewhere, don't they? We're not very good at scale and going to market. Thank you all very much for your questions. I have to now draw everything to a close. Emma, thank you very much for your contribution. We've covered a lot of questions. I think, one of the things, the lessons from the last crisis, at least from our perspective as a think tank, is that the issues around what the payback was for taxpayers is critical. And also, did the money trickle down onto the pockets of individuals, but also what level of accountability and scrutiny and governance that actually matched the huge investments that took place. And on this scale, given we're looking at a situation where wholesale elements of the private sector will be publicly owned, I think citizens won't be that forgiving when they see that actually money doesn't go directly to them, but actually goes to others, that doesn't improve their livelihoods. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Emma, for your time with us. And look forward to seeing you again. Be safe, mind your distance, and see you for one of our next sessions of online debates. Check our website out and tune in again. Take care and see you again. Bye-bye. Thank you, Emma.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.